All right, how's everybody doing today? Yeah, you're learning a lot about maps. It's really fun to see a lot of familiar faces. This means a lot to me. I'm actually from Green Bay, so went to school over in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. This is going to go through a little bit of my life, while also hopefully opening up your eyes to some of the things that I now work in the tech industry. I think the tech industry as a whole has a lot of opportunity and something that I didn't personally see when I was in school, or even throughout some of the studies that I've done throughout my mapping career. So, I'll take you on a little bit of a journey. Feel free to eat, clean your forks, don't feel bad. I mean, everyone's hungry, I am too. So yeah, let's just kick this off. By the early 1900s, much of the world as people knew it was considered conquered, mapped, and explored. World War I came to a close, and World War II was impending. While territories were divvied up, the far reaches of those territories and what they contained still remained a mystery. Yet for a small group of mountaineers, it was those places with the mysterious void on the map that they wanted to be first to set foot on, to claim as their own and all that came after them. First ascents of the world's largest peaks started to pop up in the late 1800s, and by 1950s and 60s, all the world's 8,000 meter peaks were conquered. Among this ragtag band of climbers was a mountaineer group called the Harvard Five, of whom was rising mountaineer Bradford Washburn. Washburn grew up on the East Coast, running, hiking, climbing all the mountains in the presidential range of New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. A place that, if you've climbed before, is tortuously cold, windy, and throws all the elements at you for the sake of character building. Washburn was not only a stout climber from an early age, but a man entranced by the landscapes that he wanted to ultimately conquer. He wanted to climb the mountains, and not only climb them, but share them with people when he got back. By 16, he made a guidebook called The Trails and Peaks of the Presidential Range, and it consisted of maps, local trails, climbs, and hikes. At 18, he accelerated his climbing by heading to the Alps, and ended up putting up numerous first ascents on routes never previously imagined by the Matterhorn locals. Bradford, in only his early 20s, was one of the best mountaineers in the world, continually begging peaks, writing about them, and publishing his accounts. Since his ventures into the void were much more out of the box than climbing is today, he started to gain a lot of public attention for his writings and all his mountain photography. His works eventually led him to the office of Gil Grosvenor, who was the president of National Geographic in the 1930s. By now, Bradford was in school at Harvard, studying geography. Unfortunately, that program no longer exists at Harvard. With his connection at Keyote and his love for mountaineering, he proposed a trip that would help shed light in 1935 of one of the last voids on the map in North America. His pitch was to survey the blank between Keyote Lake in Canada and Mount Hubbard in Alaska, while writing, mapping, and photographing the journey. The expedition, despite some really questionable situations, including a half-mile sprint through hell of a Serac field, his party got split up, and they actually didn't summit their objective, which was Mount Hubbard. He called it a resounding success, and Washburn came away with what he described as one of the most memorable experiences of his life. As a means to shaping the story, the map was a central instrument, fixation, and wonder to the career of Washburn. His stories were fueled by photography, and his photography fueled by the ability to depict the landscape in ways unimaginable at the time. Though not traditionally trained in cartography, he mixed his passion for the void with the ability to show people, in his eyes, what was there. Culminating a chunk of 15 years in 200 plus geographers, geologists, pilots, dog mushers, and more, Washburn went on to publish a new map of Mount McKinley. Washburn recounts, for at the time that we undertook this project, no map of the east, south, and west sides of McKinley existed, and to the north side had only been mapped in the sketchiest of ways. His work propelled him not only to the blanks on the map, but to those places that have been mapped time and time again. Drafting the heart of the Grand Canyon in 1978, he claimed every map up until then wasn't adequate enough for the grandeur of the Grand Canyon. And Washburn went on to become an expert at creating a version of the world that he wanted to see. He went on to organize a multitude of maps, including the 1988 shaded relief map of Everest that is the epitome of mountain cartography to this day. Washburn was a pioneer. He walked into literal cartographic voids, unmapped, uncharted, and unseen by the larger world. Worlds unknown to exist, and worlds previously unshared with masses. He mapped things that cartographers didn't map, know how to map, or simply couldn't piece all the parts, people, technology, and everything that basically existed to make that map. Interestingly enough, despite all the physical voids more or less known about, we live in a time where maps are being used more today than ever before in history. It's Washburn's pioneering spirit of a vision for a product, team, time, and execution of that goal that manifests its way for the future of cartography. A future that is redefining what cartography at scale is capable of, where some of the best cartography is rarely seen by the public, where the voids exist in our backyards that have never been seen before, never recognized, and where your skill as a cartographer may not be called a cartographer. It may be a dog musher one day, a photography pilot the next, but as a mapping team of engineers, scientists, and designers, your visions are clear, and the blanks on the map is limitless as your imagination. While impossible to compare my life to Washburn's, like I said, I came to Appleton here today because I grew up just north of here in Green Bay. For college, I didn't step too far into the void and headed over to the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. I became a nursing major. It lasted all of 2 years, until I found one of the most exotic classes I've ever heard of. There was a senior level course headed to map endemic species of boa constrictors on an island off the coast of Honduras called Keyote. In teams of 2, we were collecting environmental variables across the island in order to make habitat models that then scientists could use to predict where to find these boa constrictors. Taking field samples, plugging it into a tool, and spitting out a map of where you would likely find these snakes was the coolest shit around at the time. Not to mention the scientist that we were making this for was a super rad ponytailed dude from Tennessee on the International Board of Iguanas, which at the time also blew my mind that this was a job that you could do with your life. And something that stuck with me ever since as the limitless possibilities out there. I focused on geography from then on out. Sometimes the void is the collection of data. For my summers in college, I combined a newfound love for geography with that of whitewater rafting. I led hundreds, if not thousands, of river trips down the northern parts of Wisconsin on the Menominee and Peshtigo rivers, eventually into Montana on the middle fork of the Flathead, bordering Glacier National Park, and also just outside of Missoula. Can I get this video? So as I was rafting, I was flip-flopping. I was melding work and play, and it eventually led me to take an internship in the Galapagos Islands. It was an unstructured internship, and more of a, hey, you have mapping skills, can you come down and help us? My colleague and I did everything from tagging sharks, to mapping invasive ant species, to teaching all the resident scientists how to do basic GIS tasks. As we were involved in conversations surrounding the morality of tourism, I was steadily grasping that geography goes beyond the traditional realm that GIS and academia was teaching me. The conundrum between letting in more people and ruining the environment, and letting in less people who can actually pay more, wasn't only a geographical limitation issue, it's an economic, personal, and multi-generational debate. The geographical problems here weren't limited by data, as I was taught. The issue was constrained by those who could tell their story better, who could wrap up science into a perfect little narrative complete with maps, history, and projections of the future. Everyone had a chapter, but no one was bringing it together into a story. Sometimes the void is storytelling. It was this lack of story that led me to an internship at National Geographic, creating custom maps for nonprofits, telling their stories through the lens of a map. If you're ever at the American Prairie Reserve in Montana, stop out, camp a night in the prairie, and I'm pretty sure the map I made as an intern is still being used. Eventually, this mending of maps and storytelling led me to Esri's story map team, where we were building the ability for people to wrap their analysis, maps, and vision into a cohesive, web-shareable format, a void that the industry had been lacking in for quite some time. something that I could have used extensively in the Galapagos, and something a majority of GIS professionals could use to bolster their reach. A realization that Esri occurred to me, though. I have now pivoted from creating maps to being a creative maps tools themselves. It never occurred to me that in college, as a cartography professional, you could naturally work for the companies that made the tools themselves. Instead of looking up a forum of solutions, you could go there and put your vision of a solution into the world. Sometimes the void is enabling others to create. After a short tenure at Esri, a dream of mine finally came to fruition when I got a call from an old mentor at National Geographic saying they had a job opening as a cartographer on their graphics team. At this point, I loved what I was doing at Esri, and although Washburn actually turned down a gig on that to get a staff, I very much took the opportunity. When thinking about the lure of National Geographic, it was this mythical understanding and working on the maps team that drew me in. Some part of history that I thought I could be part of, while also wondering why it was me going to work at such an esteemed publication. It occurred to me that while I didn't go to a formal cartographic program or design school, I had been accumulating these geographic principles of data manipulation, storytelling, and design that when combined could actually be applied to the message that National Geographic has fostered over the past century. On top of making maps for numerous verticals at National Geographic, the goal of my tenure there was to create a map for the magazine. That time-tested stack of yellow borders was the epitome of cartography, and something that I wanted my grandma to see show up on her doorstep with my name inside it. After creating numerous works for a variety of teams, I had finally positioned myself with the magazine and was able to create a handful of maps that accompanied stories throughout a few months of publication. It was only then, when I was put on a project for the map supplement, that everything came into focus. Although in the back of my head I was scared shitless that for some reason, why did they choose me to do this? I didn't ask, and I just went full out nerd on it. The supplement is the map that they actually stuck in the middle of the magazine. It's the fold out. I found it here that the skills of a cartographer quickly blurred the lines of storyteller, project manager, decision maker, advocate, visionary, and the person with the weight of the expensive result, whether that was success or failure. Sometimes the void is staring at a blank and starting completely from scratch. As it turns out, stepping into the void also comes with an equal share of highlights. Saving Unique Habitats, as we dubbed it, this map that you see up here, was a collaboration between a new data set that Esri created and a story about the future of land conservation. And at Geo, you quickly become a niche expert on niche topics for the duration of a project, and then move on to the next and do the same thing over and over again. One day you're looking at panther habitats, the next you're partnering with PhDs on land conservation. All the while your head's down and on understanding the intricacies, you're now the only one who has full perspective. So your job is to context set and teach those around you. And if you don't do that, honestly, you'll probably get drilled into the ground and your creative soul is like crushed, right? This project was birthed to life from a blank piece of paper. Through arguments of data choices to color decisions, to a 2-week debate on a legend, to artist collaborations, all the way to political and data approvals that I lost multiple nights of sleep over. As a creator, your confidence is shaken daily. Is it the right choice? Was this the right direction? What if all this was wrong? What does wrong even mean? Despite the anxieties up until the night before the print date, it was finalized, printed, and shipped to the world. My grandma received not only a single map in the magazine, but a 36 by 36 double-sided map supplement just 5 months before she passed away. Shortly after, Saving Unique Habitats won a silver at Malafier and gold at the Society for News Design, 2 really prominent international information design competitions. If you don't know what those are, I didn't know what they were either, and I didn't even know that contests like this even existed, but from what I gathered, they were a pretty big deal. Sometimes the void is confidence, and sometimes the void is doing something that you've never done before. As I was soaking up my identity as a cartographer, it hit me that the works that we were creating weren't actually being used, and the complexities, while plenty, were packaged up and set down each time. The continuation of a product had a definitive lifespan. We would spend months making an atlas that I didn't even open. and nor did anyone who bought it. But damn did it look good on the coffee table, and damn you look well traveled for having it in your home. Traditional cartography has gotten me to the places that I found interesting, with the tools that I was taught, and with the thinking that I was trained in. To use data, to analyze the world, to share with the world, and provide an aesthetic to the new trends that popped, informed, and helped make decisions. Although GIS tools and the software were pioneered by the likes of Roger Tomlinson and Dak Jangerman of Esri back in the 60s, the entire time I was in school, there was a new world of mapping tech cropping up. This realm was being built using the same principles, yet using wildly different approaches. One that evolved out of the dot-com era, and one with as bold of a vision to that of Washburn's expeditions. One that a cartographer couldn't solve on their own. The world, and our place in it, much like the photo back at Earth from Voyager, was about to rapidly take on a new meaning. The simple idea of directions birthed to life in the dot-com boom. What if we took paper maps, digitized them into a connected world, and not only showed it to people for them to figure out their destination, but what if we could actually tell them how to get there? This is no simple task. Yet back in 1996, MapQuest was there for the win, and by 1999, MapQuest went public on the stock market as the leading provider of navigational location-based technology. This idea of location technology, while sparked in 1996, became a race to market not long after, with Yahoo Maps in 2004, Google Maps in 2005, and all of their small competitors in between. As fast as maps were coming to the web was also coming closer to us. The phones in our pockets steadily became more powerful than the computers in our homes. The technology within the phone, the cameras, the GPS, accelerometers, etc., suddenly sparked geospatial innovations that grew to define the location tech we know of today. The systems that started to define my life, that life of the cord-cutting 140 millennial, or 140 character millennial, who's always connected, started not only to creep into my own life, but it slowly penetrated the lives of my parents' generation. And not long after, even my grandma's generation was pinned to a map. The cartography and geospatial tech that I was trained in and was applying to the world seemed distanced from the world that I individually operated within. While walking into the Safeway store and picking up a magazine, or passing through an airport with someone reading your map is cool in its own way, my attention was shifting to a realm in which you didn't draw in the attention with your story, your map, or your analysis, but one in which the map was invisible to those using it, naturally woven into the lives of our everyday. That invisible nature of how much the blue dot has changed our lives extends beyond the obvious impact Google Maps has had, largely to a point that most of us don't even know how we operated in a world without it. The revolution of the blue dot has done more than revolutionize the ability for us to navigate. It has dramatically changed how things are navigated to us. I'm talking about logistics. I'm talking about logistics on a scale that even having worked in this reality for quite some time is hard to grasp. Cartography has evolved with the blue dot to a point where the modern form of beautiful cartography in my eyes has been freed from the page of a magazine, off the screen of your computer, and landed in front of you in the form of toilet paper that you ordered online yesterday. It's in front of you as the avocado in the middle of winter. It's in front of you as an ad from your favorite boots from REI on Facebook, or your local recommendations for dinner on your favorite app. It's the phone in your hand made at an equally crazy scale in a foreign world from foreign materials. It's the combination of multidisciplinary thinking to solve an innately geographic problem. And it's the underlying premise on how you can call a car with the touch of a button here in Appleton, Wisconsin, just as someone in Rome, Sydney, Mumbai, or Sao Paulo is simultaneously doing the same. To me, Uber represents one of the largest spatial challenges in the world, on par, if not exceeding that of the Amazons, Googles, or Apples. As Kurt Goldsberry, cartographer turned CTO of the Spurs, has said, countless other domains are now facing huge challenges. Many of these challenges cannot be overcome without individuals that know how to handle spatial data. These challenges cannot be overcome without individuals that know how to map spatial data. And most important, these challenges cannot be overcome without individuals that know how to extract, transform, and load intelligence out of our growing databases. When you get millions of GPS devices moving around in the world, you're now capturing data faster than you can actually store it, faster than you can analyze it, and faster than you can even scratch the surface on understanding what it means. The void that Uber ignites as an opportunity, however, is not one of traditional cartography, but filled with domains of knowledge not akin to the National Geographic programs or not to the geographic programs and underpinnings of academia. It's a void that's unrecognizable to most as a field of mapping, one that isn't easily understood, and one that isn't normally talked about on the same cartographic forums or conference tracks. I came here today to peel back the curtain of a void that isn't normally talked about, a void that at a conference like NACIS, a cartographic water cooler of conversation, is unfortunately rarely discussed. And like many cartographic conferences I see, despite all having a wealth of knowledge, show maybe not a misrepresentation of where the state of mapping is today, but more of a narrow view into an industry that is exponentially making headlines and exponentially impacting our digital lives in ways that are rooted in fundamental geographic principles. I want to take you on a journey through Uber, a company that blew apart my understanding of what mapping was, wants to be, and will be in creating the future. I hope you take this journey as a lens not only into Uber, but into the thinking of many of the apps, routines, and pieces of your day that are cartographically constructed. Think of Uber for a second. You may have used it here locally, on a business trip, or maybe even traveling abroad. You see the app, you interact with it to determine where you're going, maybe check in with it to see how close you are. But now zoom out a bit, right? The trip you're taking is only one of 15 million trips happening every single day. 15 million people are getting rides from Uber every single day. To put that in perspectives that bring it home, that's 184 Packer stadiums of people every day. Okay? Compared to US domestic air travel, that's 5 times more people flying on an airplane in the United States every day. Every single day. Over the course of the company's history, we've hit a collective 5 billion trips in 2017 and doubled that by July of 2018 to hit 10 billion trips. We operate in 65 countries, 600 plus cities across the world, and we're still growing at a record pace. In order to power this type of growth and scale, we have over 3 million driver partners that help enable over 75 million riders to get where they want to go. We then have over 19,000 employees located all over the world helping solve, enable, and grow the already mind-boggling numbers that we have today. When you see our app, you see a few hints to the spatial challenges that we experience right off the bat. You see a map. That map consists of tiles that make up that map, serving tiles to markets of varying bandwidth. You have the design and cartography of the map itself, the icons that exist on top of it. If you have a keen enough eye, you'll notice that you're seeing a Google base map, a layer that does little other than look pretty, right? You see cute little cars moving around. Those are an anonymized version of the physical cars that are actually close to you. You see destination predictions, an algorithmic personalization that tries to surface the most likely place that you're headed based on the trips that you've previously taken. If you move through what we call the trip flow, you start to see search, powered and ranked by our own spatial search results. And as you request a trip, you'll see estimated times of arrival. You'll see routing matches, and you'll see fare estimates. On top of this, the experience that you see is also product dependent. So that will change based on the product that you've chosen to take. So let's break this down piece by piece, and honestly, by no means the level that each of them deserve. Predictions is a complex algorithm taking into account where your current blue dot is, where you've currently been, and based on your patterns, where you're likely to go at that time of day. This single set of predictions powers more than 50% of our trip requests with one tap. That requires less character entry and a more personalized experience. Search is a behemoth on its own. How do you store and surface the correct locations for all the places that people want to go? How do you collect and update that information so that someone isn't pissed when they can't find Susie's Diner? Your ETA and fares are created by taking your pickup and drop-off and matching it to an extremely accurate underlying road network that then calculates your distance for fares and historical averages of trip ETAs. At the same time, the accuracy of pickups is its own swath of challenges. Depending where you are, your GPS is likely bouncing off all the buildings nearby, which doesn't really make it easy to figure out where you are. Determining where you are is actually one of the largest complexities that we're handling for accurate pickups. Yet we do have some really shape-shifty math that helps us figure it out. Then, while your request is being generated, there's an entirely different sequence of events happening on the driver's side. Your request isn't likely the only trip a driver has taken that day. It's either on the end of a previous trip or during the middle of a current trip. Not to mention the marketplace incentives, one of which is called surge that you see here, that may have perfectly supplied the market with drivers in the first place. Additionally, navigation, which is a whole topic and a half in itself. Uber on the driver's side has engineered its own navigation platform so that drivers can stay in-app, hands on the wheel, and focused on driving. The amount of effort in creating a wholly in-house navigation app is the real work of 500 plus people. Some entirely working on icons, others literally just on the camera that follows, and others to voice navigation. Then on top of that, the entire underlying data that it's powered by has been collected, deciphered, categorized, compressed, referenced, and designed to ultimately spit out an experience that the driver has on their journey. How do you think that data is collected? That is a system that needed to get spun out. Those tools needed to be created, processes established, and not only honed, but scaled so that the collection can be running in our largest markets, cities, or even blocks. This, in itself, took an entire geospatial team to determine in the first place. Where do we begin? What areas do we care about, and which do we not care about? The voids that we're filling at Uber are facilitated by those who've come before us. The Googles, the Apples, the MapQuest visionaries have started to look for new challenges, and as a result have provided insight as to where to begin. Yet the actual blank on the screen needed to be filled in with tools. Tools that were needed not only to style and make cutesy maps, but to build and literally develop all the workings in them, including the plumbings, nuts and bolts, from scratch, at scale, with an extreme amount of accuracy. By building our own map and map data, we're building the ability to create market and product differentiators that help us stay competitive in a growing field of ride-sharing marketplaces that we're in competition with globally. This is also to assume that like everything goes perfectly, right? Yet we all know that isn't the case. We get hundreds of thousands of support tickets a day. That is a lot. They cost us money each time, and it's because our designs or our tech have created an issue in the first place. Where are those issues happening? How do we fix them? What are those issues? We're mapping not only what tickets belong to which category or tech team, oftentimes algorithmically, which have been needed to be mapped to the correct machine model, but we're mapping teams that they belong to. Oftentimes algorithmically, which have been needed to be mapped to the correct machine model. But we're mapping category labels to machine models of map issues to the map teams that they belong to. Whoosh! Are you following? If I've lost you, it's totally cool, okay? I think of it like a dream within a dream within a dream that you've conjured up yourself. And yes, it's mapping. It's just not anything that you've been trained like in school. All the while we're giving you information, we're also trading information with you as well. Your location, speed, wait times, destinations, and then the list goes on. But you're also only one side of the rides marketplace, so we're trading data with drivers as well. Wrong turns, long wait times, harsh brakes, drop-off locations, voice and behavior recognition, etc. The amount of data coming into the system is absolutely extraordinary. We can not only determine the busiest places that Uber operates in, but we can do it at the street level, by day, by time of day, everywhere in the world. The tools needed for the scale of analysis isn't something that you find off the shelf or in your traditional GIS space. The amount of money invested in custom map tools and custom data visualization at Uber will literally blow your mind. Well, it should also excite you, the map maker, given free rein on the ability to create tools for spatial problems that have never been created before, for problems that have never been solved, or problems that have yet to even exist. And better, tools to find the problems in the first place. I mentioned earlier, we operate in 600 plus cities in 65 countries. The number of voids needed to be filled when the complexity of this caliber comes into play removes the cartographer from its traditional realm of map making and places them within the realm of storytelling, understanding, and pattern finding. Just as the blank on the map deserves some homework before setting foot within it, so does the geotech within Uber, and especially within the big data era that we live in today. In order to facilitate our vision of cartographic perfection, we have a massive data science and research team. Before decisions are made on strategy, both quantitative and qualitative research is done to prove theories and confirm that our product designs even match customer expectations. A study we did last year revolved around the various markets that we operate within, and how the varied geographies think about destination setting. While here in the US, we use addresses, and our database of those addresses is pretty good. What happens in markets, though, without addresses, or where people don't actually know or use their address? We went to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, for instance, and found that addressing isn't popular at all. And with the female population increasingly more mobile in society, many have never previously known their home address, if they had one in the first place. How would someone without an address not only tell us where they're going, but how would they tell us how to get home? How do we flex our spatial understanding to an anthropological understanding in markets that have a varied, yet entrenched cognitive perception of the sense of place? Even here in Appleton, you may orientate yourself to the highway, or in Green Bay, maybe the stadium. To show someone where you are in Wisconsin, you may throw up the classic hand example. Understanding the niche dynamics of our markets is crucial to unlocking new business opportunities and markets themselves. If people don't know addresses, why show them? But what do you use instead? Is a neighborhood or a landmark more useful? Can you modify the presentation of a database so that it's more actually associative? What type of data helps a user understand with confidence that the Starbucks or market that they've chosen is in fact the correct location? You'll see the manifestation of this thinking in features on Uber, like Save a Place, Set Pin on Map, or like my job, you drum up new proposals for features based on the outcomes of that research. You'll also see this in the app we've launched for emerging markets in India, in Sao Paulo, called Uber Lite, where the map itself doesn't even exist, and we're finding that maybe it doesn't need to. It's the cartographer's understanding of data pipelines, determining what data is collected, how that data is collected, and ultimately mapping that to the mental model of how people think and carry out a task. Only then does that data squeak out to the hands of the consumer as an experience. The opportunity to understand intimately how your customer thinks helps you as a cartographer fill in the many voids out there. Herein lies where I believe the future of mapping is going. While your consumer mapping providers give you a point A to point B solution, Uber is in the business of going from point A to B to C to D and beyond. We not only care about getting you to the correct location, but we care about what happens at that pickup or at that destination. We don't just want to get you to your location. Your expectation is that you get dropped off at the front door. But how do you know where the front door is? At every building in the world. What defines the front of a building? We have markets with regulatory zones that if you have a keen enough eye, you'll notice that a geofence could solve that problem quite well. But what is that experience to a rider or to a driver? Who creates 100,000 plus geofences that could change every month? Who then maintains them? We additionally have airport complexities, where we're now able to create a virtual carousel, giving people differing door pickups so that traffic doesn't get picked up or backed up outside. We have venues with complexities that require granular optimization, like concerts. And then we have tolls, which are an entire basket of geo on their own. While I speak to our primary rides business complexities, Uber now owns Jump, the electric-assisted dockless bike company. Electric scooters, we also have Uber Freight, we have Uber Eats, Uber ATG, which is our autonomous group, we have Uber Elevate, which is our flying car group, and we even have more in the pipeline that I can't necessarily get into. Each of these verticals having its own fair share of geospatial problems that haven't been solved for, and are in need of stellar people like you to help. Each of these verticals have niche complexities, and since it's all under one hood, you also now have macro complexities, tying all these systems together for things like multimodal transportation, which is super trendy right now. In the bike space, how do you rebalance bikes the most effectively? What happens when you don't need to rebalance them, and all of a sudden you open up a new market for the public to rebalance them on their own? In the eats space, how do we perfect courier pickups so that they don't have to wait at the restaurant while the food is cooking? Does the restaurant have car parking, bike parking? Which side of the building is even the correct side to pick up on? How do you know that the Panda Express is actually inside of a giant mall? How do you navigate the courier from the parking lot into the proper location inside that mall? How do couriers position themselves to optimize their time and energy in the marketplace? All this helps you get your food faster. Uber Freight is also being reinvented from the ground up. How do you share shipping loads of shippers to carriers? How do you collect all the shipping facility information in the world? It's not just about getting a shipment from point A to point B. It's about perfecting what happens at point A or what happens at point B. Do you see a trend here? Mapping is going granular. Our autonomous group, working to figure out maps for self-driving, which in itself is a whole separate world of mapping. How do you train the machine to recognize obstacles at speed in varying geographies? How do you surface to the rider a map in a self-driving car? Do they even need a map? Here's a fun fact. Did you know that the most common app on airline in-flight entertainment is the map? How is that any different than a self-driving car? The information a rider needs is drastically different from that of a driver or pilot. You no longer care about the micro turns, but now you care about where you can go pee, or grab a coffee, and when are you going to get there? How do you build, collect, and store data for a paradigm shift of navigation in the self-driving space? A paradigm that is potentially 10 plus years out, but already showing its impacts to the current systems. And then we have Uber Elevate, which is on an entire level, like a whole new level, literally. Like, how do you create multi-dimensional flying lanes in the air over large metropolitan areas? Honestly, I have no clue, but that shit seems super hard. Super fun. And also something that no one has figured out yet, or even contemplated what policy changes need to be made now in order to accommodate a vision that we're planning to execute on in the next 5 years. All of this is to even suggest that you need the physical representation of a map at all. At a point not too far in the distant future, you and your map, or you and your place within it, will be augmented. I say will because I've seen it. And holy shit, is it game-changing. What happens in a world where the void on the map is literally your reality? Imagine walking down the street, tapping hovering POIs that tell you menus, open close times, navigation, etc. This is why you see big data companies in our time investing in verified, granular place data. The Foursquares, the Facebooks, the Googles, the Apples, and Ubers of the world. Sometimes the cartographic void is no map at all. While the big data cartography of our era may look different, act different, and even consist of unfamiliar job titles, our industry is pushing ahead into a void that is exponentially growing. It's growing with spatial decisions needing to be made, designs created, and theories tested. Washburn set out into the blanks on the map, unsure of what he would find, and unsure of what he would need when he got there. Yet he brought back a geographical vision and figured out how to bring it to life. The cartographic problem spaces that to me seem so incredibly far away from my world, the voids that I didn't even know existed, are one by one being flipped on their heads when I get there. Geography has prepared me to take a void and confidently dive in. It's taught me that cartography will manifest in ways that don't look like cartography, act like cartography, or in some ways are not traditional definitions of cartography at all. Though with that jump, geography or cartography, the field we all know and love, has primed us with the ability to see from multiple resolutions, think in spatial understandings, solve and approach problems from unique pattern-recognizing perspectives. As the invisible realm of cartography and big data increasingly weaves through your daily routines, gets you to where you're going, the products you enjoy showing up on your doorstep, or the food you love in your belly, you, as cartographers and stewards of the geographic voice, should be empowered to engage our industry from all angles. An industry with unknown futures, unbuilt tools, and undefined systems, and yet confidently take a seat at the table. So roll up your sleeves, step into the void, and help define what you want the blank on the map to look like. Thank you.